Alright, what's up guys? Today we're going to be going over Linux terminal file permissions. And you can see right over here I have a little snippet out of the ls-la command, and this is what you would actually come up with if you actually type that into your terminal. Depending on what directory you're in, this is what's going to show up. And you can see one right here is going to be what determines whether it's a file or a directory. The second part is the file permissions, read, write, and execute, and it's also for the user. So this right here is going to be the user, and this is going to be the group, and then this is going to be everybody else on the system. And 3, that's going to be the number of links. This is going to be the owner of the file, and this is going to be the owner group of the file. And this is the file size right here. And this is the last time this file was edited, and the file name is going to be right here on the end. So those are important to know. Now, like I said before, it's either going to be a D or a dash. A dash is going to be a file, a D is going to be a directory, and like I said before, this is going to be the user group and the everybody else on the system. And one thing that you might be asking is, why does a file need to be executable? Well, I'm going to show you inside of the terminal, but whenever a file, or not a file, but a directory is executable, that means that you're allowed to enter it and you're allowed to look inside of it and manipulate it. And we're going to be using numbers. The command that we're actually going to be using is chmod. So it's change and modify and the file name. So it's going to be chmod, then the numbers of this is going to be for the user, this is going to be for the group, and this is going to be for everybody else on the system. And you're going to change these numbers depending on what you want the permissions for that individual to be on this file. And the last thing you're going to be putting is the file name. 1 is going to be executable, 2 is going to be write, and 4 is going to be read, and you're just going to add these up depending on what you want the file permissions to be. And I have a little chart over here. So if no permissions at all on this file, you're going to put a 0. If you want it to just be executable, obviously you're going to put an X. 2 is going to be a W. If you're going to put 3, it's going to be write and executable, and so on. If you want all the permissions to be open on this file, it's going to be read, write, and execute, and that's going to be 7. And we're also going to be changing the owner of the file and also the group of the file. So, and right down here is the chown command, change owner, and then you're going to put the owner that you want to make the file belong to, and then the group that you want to make the file belong to, and then afterwards you're going to put a file name, and you're also going to have to put a colon in between the owner and the group. Now let's hop into the terminal and test that out. Alright, to start out with, we're just going to create a directory, so let's go mkdir, and then we'll just call this dir, and we're also going to make a file, so let's just put touch, and then we'll just call it file. Now if I do a ls-la, this is actually what I was showing you inside of that slideshow. One thing that you know, I am root right now, and then you can see that automatically it's going to be your primary group and also the user that you're using whenever you're creating files. Now, if we want to end up changing this, what we're going to have to do, as in permissions, we're going to just put, for instance, chmod, and if we do 777, and we could put our directory and our file right inside of there, and if I go in ls-la, you can see that we have read, write, and execute for everybody on the system. So just for an example, let's just switch user into Baradinix here, and now if I go ls, I can actually go into the file here and type whatever I want. Okay, now I can save that, and if I cat that out, you can see that it actually saved inside of that file, and I can also go inside of the directory here, so I can go cd dir, okay, so we can make a directory. Okay, and you can see that we actually have that directory inside of there. Another thing to note is if I go ls-la, that it actually belongs to me, that directory. So we can just exit out of there. Okay. Now I'm going to switch user back into root. Okay. Now if I do a chmod and let's just do 722. So that's going to be read for everybody else on the system. So 2 is read. So and 7 is going to be obviously for the root user. So it's going to have full permissions. Okay, and then we can just put our file and our directory. And now if I go ls-la, you can actually see here it's just write for each for the group and also everybody else on the system. Okay. So if I switch user back into Baradinix here, now I can try to cat this out. I can cat file. You can see that I can't actually cat it out because I don't have read permission, but one thing I can do is do a echo, and we can do hello world, and then we can actually put that inside a file. But once again, I can't read it. And if I try to cd into dir, you can see permission denied. It doesn't matter if I go mkdir and and then try to actually make a directory inside of here. Let's just call it Bob here. You can see that I don't have permission to do anything really with this. I can't ls into dir either, and that's just because we don't have the executable mark. So let's just switch user back into root. Okay, now we can do another chmod. Okay, so let's just do chmod, and that's going to be 7 and 3 3. So this is going to be write and executable because 1's executable and 2 is going to be write. So you just add them together. There you go. You got 7 3 3, and now we can put our file and our dir. So if I go ls-la, you can see that we actually have write and we have executable right here. So if I switch user back into Baradinix, okay, now if I go ls-dir, don't have permission to do that because I don't have read enabled. But one thing I can do though is I can't cd into dir. But if I go ls, you can see I can't actually show anything inside of the directory. And if I go mkdir and then Bob inside of here, you can see that I can actually create the directory, but I can't see anything inside of here. Now if I try to cat file again, you can see I don't have permission. Now let's switch user back into root. Okay, and one thing that we can actually do here, and I'm actually going to do the chown command so we can change the owner. Now, one thing I'm going to do is with groups, groups can just be like the user. So for instance, if I do a chmod 770 and I do our dir and our file, okay, ls-la, now you can see that whenever I switch user into Baradinix, same thing, I can't cat out file, I can't go into dir, but if I end up switching the user, or if I actually make myself part of the root group, that's another way of actually doing that. But what I'm going to actually do here is just switch the group right now. So I can do chown, and we'll just put root, and then we'll put the group, which I'm going to make Baradinix, and then we can do that for dir and file. Okay, so if I ls-la, you can see Baradinix is now the group. So if I switch user into Baradinix now, okay, and then I cat file, you can see that we can actually see everything inside of that file, or I can cd into dir because I actually have permission with the group now. So you can see that we have read, write, and executable for the group, and we can actually, like we were doing before, change any one of these individually. Now, if I just wanted to make myself the actual owner of this, what we would just do is we can just do a chown, and like we did with the group, you can see that now we're the owner of the file and also the group. Okay. Now I can I'm gonna actually just change that back. So one thing that you can actually do, and I'm gonna actually just switch into Baradinix here. If you you can actually add groups that aren't your main group. Okay, so it could be say for instance like the filing department, or like if, for a business oriented applications like yeah, you can just have groups that each user is going to be a part of, and actually change the permissions accordingly so that the group has access to what you want them to have access to. So, okay, let me just put groups here. You can actually see I put another one in here just for an example. I created a group Bob, and I'm a part of that with my Baradinix account here. Now, these are actually subgroups, but it works the same way whenever you're actually dealing with file permissions. So one thing I'm going to do here is switch user back into root. So, and then we can just do a chown root, and then we can do Bob. Okay, and then we can do our dir and our file. Okay, ls-la. You can see that now we still have all the permissions with the group, but it's still owned by root, and now I can switch user into Baradinix. And like I said before, I do have that Bob group inside of my groups, and you can actually see I can ls into dir, I can cd into dir, or I can also cat out the file. Hopefully this helped you guys with permissions. The main thing you got to know is chown, that's going to be change or modify, and also the numbers. The numbers are pretty simple. Once you get used to them, there are flags that you can use to actually add executable or whatnot, but in my opinion, this is the easiest way to know exactly what you're doing. It stays very consistent. One's going to be executable, two's going to be write, and four is going to be read. You just add them up to be whatever you want them to be. That way you can actually select the permissions that you want to use for your user group and also everybody else on the system. Yeah, hopefully this helped you guys out. Leave a like if you like my video, and see you next time. Peace.